Well, the Loonie continues to hover at around parity with the greenback. We're still waiting, though, for prices to adjust accordingly. And joining us now to make sense of it all is Nick Bontis, an award-winning professor from the DeGroote School of Business. Nice to have you with us, Nick.
Happy Friday, Taz.
Thank you so much. Well, at close, the Loonie was at trading at 98.69 cents, so a little bit below today. We all know there's an upside and a downside to having a high dollar, but we're waiting for that upside still. How long is it going to be before those prices start to adjust?
Reconciliation of pricing typically takes a while. That's the unfortunate thing, Taz. And there's some visible things that people are complaining about already. For example, books. You got the $29.95 U.S. price and the $34.95 Canadian price. Consumers are not happy fans of the pricing of the books.
No, not at all.
Even vehicles, the Camaro, which is actually manufactured in Oshawa, Ontario, actually costs 15% more to purchase here as a Canadian. So that doesn't make sense. And even jewelry, you take a Tiffany diamond ring, same Tiffany store in Toronto versus the same Tiffany store in New York.
Right.
They're paying $7,500 in Toronto and $6,500 in Canada. So there's still a lot of price differential. And until the inventory clears, i.e. get rid of the old inventory that's been in stock and that the new inventory come in, then you're actually going to see a little bit of similarity in pricing. We see it already in certain clothing stores. For example, men's suits. You got Winners and their sister organization Marshalls in the U.S. and there's a lot of similarity in pricing.
So how does it depend on each individual business and how far they buy in advance, or is there like a general time frame you can give us?
Which different industries have different time frames. For example, the auto industry, it's happening right now. We had announcements from Porsche Canada, of course, for a $10,000 little bit of a Canadian currency credit. So all prices for Porsche vehicles dropped $10,000 in the last couple of days just to make them equal with the U.S. pricing. So you see in the auto industry, we're going to have some movement. In the clothing industry, we'll have quick movement. Other things that take a long time to turn in inventory, like electronic equipment, I give it another couple of months before we see those price differences happen.
Well, let's talk about oil, because along the same sort of vein, I'm assuming crude is bought in U.S. dollars, and with the Loonie trading at parity, we would expect that the price at the pumps would start to fall, and we haven't seen that yet.
Let's take a look at the historical context of oil with gas prices. So if we go back about 12 months ago, oil was trading at $44, and today it's trading at about $84. So let's say that it's doubled in the last 12 months. If you look at gas prices, it was trading 89 cents a year ago and about $1.04 today. It's only gone up a little bit of percentage. So interestingly, although they move up, the way oil and gas are related is that when there's a shock or a crisis and oil prices shoot through the roof, gas prices also shoot through the roof, but then they're very, very slow to come down.
So why is that? Why does it rise exponentially in such a short time period, but when things are going well and there isn't as much demand, it takes a long time before we see the price at the pumps drop?
Well, let's understand that OPEC is the the consortium that controls the oil prices. So when they want to move it up, they'll move it up in terms of a crisis situation. But when it comes to drivers, just the average person like you and me, we have no choice, Taz. We gotta fill up the car when the car needs gas. And the retailers of those gas stations, they know this. So they're gonna gouge us all the way down, trying to usurp as much profit as they can from the consumer, you and me.
So do we have to accept some of the blame and realize that we haven't cut back on a lot of our consumption, and if we did, maybe that would make OPEC kind of sit back and take a listen?
That's right, Taz. It's not only consumption, but it also has to do with taxes. A significant portion of the pricing of our gas in Canada, for example, at $1.04 a liter today, compared to the U.S., which is equivalent about 75 cents a liter, is the tax difference. So we have a massive tax base on gas. But you know what? Let's not complain too much as Canadians, because if you look at other jurisdictions around the world, they're way worse off. Taz, for example, the Netherlands has gas at $2.09 a liter.
Ouch.
And Turkey, the most expensive country in the world, $2.44 a liter.
That doesn't make sense considering the proximity to where that oil is coming from. Okay, Toyota under heat again, another setback with Consumer Reports issuing a rare do not buy warning for the 2010 Lexus GX 460. We have some of that video of the test that they actually conducted. If we could roll that, and we'll see how that went. Now, they say that the vehicle rolls easily, and we'll see that.
Consumer Reports has uncovered a potential safety risk with
So there's a
Toyota's
Lexus going, and we'll see it get up to a higher speed. And you've got an opinion on this. You're saying going at this speed, most cars would have the same sort of response, because it literally slides sideways.
Well, you see it right there in the video, Taz. That is the video evidence that Consumer Reports use to actually claim that the GX is rolling over. I do not see a rollover.
No.
In fact, there's no evidence of any testing that they did that there were any rollovers. And frankly, if
well,
you
they said it could easily roll.
But you know what? Any vehicle could easily roll over at that speed if it hits a bump or a stone or anything like that. You take a large vehicle, an Escalade or Lincoln Navigator. So in my opinion, I believe that that they are just trying to sell magazines. This is a buzz tactic.
To be fair, though, they did say that they tested 95 other SUVs in that ratings, and no other vehicle slid as far as the Lexus GX 460 did.
Well, and
I'm assuming it would be the same conditions for each vehicle.
It would, and you know what? Sliding is poor, but it's not tipping over, and that's what they're concentrating on. They're trying to come up with this massive crisis information, and you know what? I don't trust it. I think there's a conspiracy going on here, Taz. Consumer Reports knows that Toyota's under the gun. They're taking a nice video of a Lexus sliding sideways, but let's face it, most SUVs would slide sideways. I think they just want to sell more magazines, and you know what? They're latching onto Lexus, and Toyota's very vulnerable right now, so I'm not going to believe this at all.
Consumer Report, probably owned by an American company, I would guess. So you think that American companies, car companies, stand to gain from this?
Let's not forget who owns most of General Motors right now, right?
Yeah, it's the government.
The government.
All right. Speaking of other hot items, the iPad selling out across the U.S., and this is pushing back the release date for Canadians that want it. What's going on here? Because it seems like every time Apple puts out a hot product, and there have been many, they all sell out. Are they not forecasting sales in advance, or is this part of their strategy to sell more and create more of a hype?
They are forecasting demand perfectly, Taz. This is what we call buzz management, and it happens with all these hot new electronic products. You can think of the Sony PlayStation 3 had the same problem.
Sure.
The Nintendo Wii had the same problem. So they're sitting there right now in California, and they're saying, you know what? We have a certain amount of volume. Let's take care of the domestic volume first. Supply is going to stay even. Demand is going to go up. And anybody who's taken economics in school knows that price is going to go up in the meantime, and that's what they're going to do with the Italian market.
To be fair, though,
international market.
They did have some manufacturing problems when they first came out with that device, and they couldn't have foreseen that. But you think this is a trend with that Apple? I
think it's a proactive management trend of their buzz, and they've actually had a few complaints. You're right, Taz. There's a Wi-Fi problem with the iPad that's been reported by a lot of consumers in the US. Wi-Fi, of course, is the chip that allows the iPad to connect to a local corporate network or a wireless network, and people have been saying that every 5 minutes or so, they're dropping that signal, and that's not good. They need to fix that before they launch internationally.
So is the honeymoon over? Or
Absolutely.
All these problems starting to come to the forefront?
Now when you see a whole bunch of consumers pushing the iPad to the limit, that's when you see all the problems with the iPad. So in fact, as Canadians, we'll probably benefit with the wait because they'll have tweaked out all those little problems before they launch here in Canada.
Do you think the price will drop? Because it's about $499 right now for the base unit.
I think they're still going to stick with the price because they wouldn't be dumb to drop the price knowing that the demand is still very, very high.
Okay. Talking about demand, a lot of demand to see Sarah Palin last night. People paying, $200 just to get in, and then $1,000 to get a picture. I don't quite understand it. Why? What's the fascination with Sarah? She's obviously a very beautiful woman and, former politician. Does she have the staying power to stick around, or is this kind of she's going to be gone in a blink?
Well, first of all, she was making $125,000 as the governor of Alaska, and now she's making that much every time she stands up and talks for 60 minutes. And reports are coming in that she's made $12 million in the last 9 months. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's building a brand for herself. She is non-elitist. She's just a down-to-earth woman.
Is that all it is? She's down to earth, kind of like Oprah. People can relate to her?
That's right. If you look at some of the other presidents in the past, you look at Bush, or even look at Clinton, or even look at Obama, all these are Harvard-educated, elite types of individuals, and she's none of that. She's the down-to-earth person, and people are actually, gravitating towards that. And I think as long as she stays in the market for speaking and somebody else writing books for her, she can be making millions in the next couple of years.
We learned today that Obama filed for his taxes, and we learned what that figure was, and it was about $5 million, 5 something. So it's crazy to me to think that someone is earning twice as much as the president, a former Alaska governor, $10 million since dropping out.
As long as the message continues to be in demand. So let's face it, she's making a killing in the last 9 months, but you know what? Eventually she's going to have to change the speech. If she comes back to Hamilton, she can't say the same thing.
No, she can't.
And as long as she keeps that speech hot, keeps her own brand hot, she can still demand that pricing because people gravitate towards her.
Okay, Nick, well, we've got time for one last thing. Just this afternoon, the U.S. government accused Goldman Sachs, the investment company, of defrauding investors by failing to disclose conflicts of interest in mortgage investments. Maybe you can break that down to us. It's obviously a huge development. What are the implications of that as well?
This is actually very, very huge business news, Taz, and the reason for that is Goldman Sachs is the prince of New York City when it comes to investment banks. And what you don't want is any allegations that state that they were in fact cheating on their customers and betting at the same time as recommending certain investments to go in the opposite direction. And that's what what the SEC is alleging that Goldman Sachs has done. We better watch this story over the next couple of weeks because it should have massive ramifications for other investment banks on Wall Street.
Okay, we will keep an eye on it. Thanks for your time again, Nick.
Thank you.
And that's Bontis on Business for this week. Be sure to check out his website, nickbontis.com. Thanks again for your time.